Teague here. Teague here. Welcome to the live stream. Thanks for coming in. Teague here. Teague here. Welcome to the live stream. Thanks for. I swear I do that every time. So this is, I don't know, maybe it's my 6th or 7th live stream, and trying to get a feel for how these work. Anyway, this particular live stream, we're going to talk about technique and a whole bunch of different things we can do for improving our technique. So I have a small list of things we're going to try to accomplish in this 30-minute live stream. We're going to talk about some finger exercises. I like to call them kind of finger gymnastics that are pretty easy on the brain but really good for both hands. We're going to talk about some scale patterns, the importance of working on scales, and specifically some patterns. Kind of things like that. We'll talk about that. Arpeggios, what arpeggios are, and the importance of those being a part of your practice routine, and also the importance of them, how they relate to technique. We're going to talk about skipping strings, good exercises for the pick hand. We'll talk about using jam tracks to really to use jam tracks effectively when you practice, and how much more fun they can be than just, say, practicing alone or with a metronome. We are, just for this lesson, going to use a metronome. And we'll talk a little bit about alternate picking versus natural or economy picking. Some people call it sweep picking, but we'll talk, there's some confusion sometimes there to how people describe picking, and we'll clarify how that's going. So yeah, so thanks everybody for coming in here thus far. We just started live stream today talking about technique. David, how are you? Good to see you. David, yes, I will answer some questions on, and I know what you're talking about as far as stuff getting stiff. David asked about whether we'll talk about things to help for basically the muscles and stiffness in the wrists and fingers and things like that. It happens. Paul, nice to see you again. Thanks for coming in. And Haley, how are you? Good to see you. Life is good. Good. I have 1 week left at the Roxy. And then well, I've been working super hard on the site. Lots of things happening, lots of fun, exciting stuff happening. So anyway, so if we have our guitar hands, let's jump right in. I'm just going to throw my metronome on here because we're going to use the metronome quite a bit today, since we're talking about technique, and a lot of technique is involving some very specific finger muscles and working on those muscles. So here, let me grab my metronome. So the first thing we're going to start with is something I just like to call finger gymnastics. I think every teacher has some variation of this. The reason I like these is they're not, the thing with learning scales or arpeggios, we have to give a lot of thought to the notes on the fretboard, what notes we have to play, you know, the order, all that stuff. This does not. This is just, and this, you know what I love about this particular exercise, this applies to anybody, whatever age or level you've been playing. You can make this as difficult as you want it to be, or as easy as you want it to be. So I'm going to show you easy, and then I'm going to show you how I still use this to this day to do warm-ups and to practice. Okay, so we're just going to put our hands in a position. I'm in 3rd position here. Notice my guitar does not have a 3rd fret dot, but I have my 1st finger on the 3rd fret. 2nd finger is going to look after the 4th fret. 3rd finger is going to look after the 5th fret. And my pinky is going to look after the 6th fret. So that would be called 3rd position. If I move to 5th position, my fingers would then go 1st finger as the 5th, 2nd as the 6th, so on, right? Each finger gets the next fret. One thing to be aware of when we're playing in positions and the fingers look after, the thumb should approximately be, I don't know how easy it is to see that, but it should be the middle of the neck, or maybe even a little bit higher towards your fingers. And one of the tricks with all exercises is keeping the hand relaxed. We'll talk about that as we start working on these exercises. And my thumb should be in between, I'm going to bring it up over top, between finger 1 and 2 basically, but then again the middle of the fretboard, and we're going to try to keep it relaxed. As we would shift, the thumb would stay in that same position. We don't want it dragging behind or coming. Now, all that being said, there'll be plenty of times we will bring the thumb up over top, and you may sometimes hear people talk about, oh, don't bring the thumb up over the top. In general, it may not be a habit that we want to get into. However, it does have its role. It has its role both in sometimes playing notes and sometimes blocking strings. So it's not like we'll never use it. We sometimes will. Okay, so let's say we're in third position here. I'm on my sixth string, my low E. I'm just going to put my first finger down and play this note. We don't even care what it is. It is a G, but we don't care. The purpose of this exercise, we're not going to get all wrapped up in note names. Then I'm going to drop my second finger in. I'm going to leave my first finger down because I won't hear that string anymore. Then I'll put my third finger in. I'm now on the fifth fret, sorry. So we went 3, 4, 5. And then I'll put my pinky on that 6th fret. Now notice all 4 fingers are down. So depending on how long I've played, I might want to alternate pick that, or I might just want to down pick it all if alternate picking is tricky. Okay? Each finger stays down, and then I'll go backwards. I'll take each one off. Now one of the tricks when you take each finger off is try not to let it get too far away from the fretboard. We don't really want to do that because then it has all that travel time. So we try to keep it close. Here's a little interesting trick you can do. Don't play. Just lift the pinky off. Hover it as close as, I don't know how well you can see that, as close as you can. So it comes off, but it just hovers. Then take your third finger off, hover it. But again, don't let it go very far. Then your second finger. Then put them back in, take them off, hover. So see what I'm doing? I'm not even worried about playing. I'm just trying to keep my fingers very close to the fretboard. Okay, now I'm going to come back. I'm going to play it. So I'm going up and back down. Remember, as I go up, I leave each finger. So this is the beginning of the exercise. I could then move it to my 5th string, 4th string, 3rd string, so on. And back down. Now, we're going to use a metronome. We're going to talk about some things with the metronome that'll be important to practicing that. But let's just, for a moment, we could look at some ways of making that a little more difficult. We could skip strings. We could go from 6 to 4, 5 to 3, 4 to 2, 3 to 1, something like that. Or so at that time I went 1, 2, 3, 4 again. What if I went 4, 3, 2, 1? Now again, I'm skipping strings there. And here's the beauty of these particular exercises. You do exactly where you're at as a player. So if you're fairly new, you keep it very, very simple. You focus on those things we just talked about, keeping your fingers close to the fretboard, one finger at a time, maybe just down picking it all if you're not very familiar with alternate picking. You do want to get to where you all are eventually alternate picking it though. Okay, and then we talked about moving the string. We could also shift. And remember, as I shift, that thumb moves with my hand. Don't let it fall behind or move ahead. It should shift kind of like a robot. I could shift and switch strings. Again, I'm just going 1, 2, 3, 4. I could go 4, 3, 2, 1. You kind of get the idea. So we could shift. We could skip strings and shift. We could also start now mixing up the pattern. So maybe instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe I go 1, 3, 2, 4. Or 4, 2, 3, 1. So that's what I just did, didn't I? Anyway, yeah, you get the idea though. You could make any number pattern that you want to create. So now let's talk about using the metronome and how to effectively, and David, I'm not going to forget about your question on the wrist and fingers, because that's a very important thing. David asked about just stuff getting stiff. And that happens when we play. I just had a student in person here just a couple days ago where we spent quite a bit of time talking about playing bar chords for an extended period of time and how hard those can be on the wrists. So we're going to come back and talk about that in just a moment. But now let's back into our finger exercises. So we've talked about keeping them simple or making them more difficult by changing the pattern. Now let's look at using a metronome with them, because this is important, right? Right now I just have the metronome set at 60. I'm going to crank this up so you can hear it. Hopefully that's fairly audible, I hope. So now with this finger gymnastics, I'm going to practice quarter notes every beat. Eighth notes, I double it. 1 and 2 and. If I do eighth note triplets, it's 3 evenly spaced notes in every beat. So that gives me a triplet, 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 triplet. You'll notice something very interesting about the eighth note triplets. Because we're playing groups of 4, when you go triplets, the pinky is hitting with that click, the second click, and then triplet, the third finger on the next string is hitting with the click, and then 1, 2, 3, then your 1, 2, 3, second finger. So notice click, 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 click. So it's like the click is happening on, notice what's happening with the pattern. It's kind of neat, right? The pinky, then the third finger, then the second finger, then your first finger. Click, 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 right? Because they're eighth note triplets, so there's 3 evenly spaced in every beat, but because we're playing groups of 4. So that might feel a little weird on the head when you first start doing that, but it's something that you should try to practice, as those are eighth note triplets. Then I'm gonna put the metronome back on. I don't know if I mentioned, but it's at 60, so 60 beats per minute, right? It's the same as the second hand on your clock. So here is our eighth note triplets again at 60. Then we'd have 16th notes. The beauty of practicing those right now like this with groups of 4 is your first finger will be with every click. Sorry, 1 E and a click, 3 E and a, and we're going to count that as 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And all this material will be on the site, musiclearning.com, and for those that I know, some of you being in here, you're aware of the changes happening to the site and everything that's going on. Very, very exciting and fun. This will all be up there. Okay, so what did we do? Yeah, so we did eighth notes, quarter notes, eighth notes. Paul just says it's a good lesson for practice for beginners. Absolutely. And again, for beginners and also for people who've played a long time, because, and I'm not making this up when I talk about, I've played a long time, but if I really want to focus on some technique for the next 15, 20 minutes, I put my metronome on. I can take any one of these patterns, have it where I skip strings or shift and skip strings, and put on my metronome and up the tempo. So maybe I can do all of those. Maybe I can do quarter notes, eighth note triplets, and 16th notes fine at 80. Maybe I can't do them so well at 100. So I work my way towards 100. Which brings us to another thing with practicing with the metronome. You want to make sure that you're practicing it where you still have control. For years when I was a young player, I made the mistake of always trying to push myself to where I actually couldn't play it. So in other words, if I could play, let's say, eighth notes at 80, whatever, any example, let's say eighth notes at 80, then I would practice eighth notes at 90 because I thought I can already do them at 80. But the problem, I couldn't do them at 90. So what I was doing was I was practicing them not very well, and I was reinforcing bad habits. So this is probably one of the most important lessons I ever learned on any instrument, but you have to practice it where you still have control. So take it to the breaking point. So if you can do it at 80 and then you take it to 85 and it starts not feeling good, you need to bring it back to 80 or 82 maybe, but wherever it is that you still have control and it feels good. And then you do that, and then the next day you maybe try 85 then. If it doesn't work, you still stay 82. And one thing I used to do a lot is I would use a calendar. I haven't done it in a while, but I used to do this a lot, and I should probably do it again. I'll use a calendar and I will write on it whatever the exercise I'm practicing. So maybe I just give it a name, exercise A, and I write where I can effectively play whatever it is I'm after. Let's say 16th notes. And if I can play them at 80 today, I write 80. Tomorrow I try it at 82. If I can't, if they're not comfortable, I bring them back. I write 80 on my calendar again. And then maybe the following day it's 80. Then maybe the third or fourth day or whatever, I get to 82. So what happens on my calendar, it looks something like this. You know, it's like each day, 80, 80, 80, 82, 82, 85, 87, 90. I might have a little jump for 3 days in a row. All of a sudden stuff is really coming together. Then it might be 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, 90. And then there might be a little jump again. That's how it typically works with practicing with a metronome. But very important. So the most important takeaway from that is play where you still have control. Super important. Even though I know you might be going, well, I can already play it at 80. I can't play it at 90, so I got to try it at 90. But if you're making a sloppy mess at 90, you're not helping yourself at all. Come back to 80, have patience and persistence, And you'll see, before you know it, you'll be playing it at 90 with that same. So this brings me back to David's question about muscles. So that's going to go very hand in hand with what we just talked about with the calendar. When you practice it where you're comfortable at something, your hand should be fairly relaxed, and you'll probably find that for the most part it is fairly relaxed. It's once we start speeding up out of that comfort zone, stuff starts to get, right? Stuff starts to stiffen up. We don't want that, because once those muscles are all starting to get really, really stiff, that's no good in any way, shape, or form. So that no pain, no gain thing that applies to runners and weightlifting and stuff, it doesn't apply to guitar players. The muscles in our fingers, it's too small. It's no good. You're going to end up with something not good happening, like tendonitis or carpal tunnel. So we need to be very aware of that, especially if we're practicing a lot. So here's the trick again. When you're practicing it and it feels comfortable, so that might be very slow. It might be here, right? And then if you follow those rules with the metronome and staying where you can always play it comfortably, you will find it will start speeding up and your hand is still as comfortable as it was when you played it slower. And what you're doing, you're working on all those muscles. You're letting those muscles get used to it. I'm just going to use one more quick example on that, and then we're going to move on to the next topic. And I'll get to some of the questions and stuff on the chat. But so as some of you may know, I play 3 nights a week, sometimes 4 nights a week, have now for 6 years downtown at the Roxy in downtown Vancouver. It's coming to an end. I have 1 more week. Sad and not sad. It's another whole thing. I'm very excited about what it means as far as the site and my dedication back to teaching and doing my own thing. Tripfuse finally being active again, because I've been wrapped up in other stuff. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But what I wanted to say is we started to play Thundershark. Right? So we learned that one practice, and you know, I play that part, and that part goes through most of the song. Well, holy smoke, I couldn't even get through in rehearsal. I couldn't get through the whole song. My hand would just like freeze up, and I play a lot of guitar. My hand would freeze up and I couldn't play it. And then what I had to do is I devised a way that, so I tap part of it. So I'll go, let's see. It's a little tough on the acoustic. I'm obviously playing an electric, but I would tap part of it to give this hand a little tiny rest. I would still finish it, and then through the whole song, I will go back and forth. So I will play it the way it's supposed to be until my hand starts freezing up. Then I tap it, and back and forth. So, but here's the point. When we brought it into the set list and we started playing it fairly regularly, it did not take very long for those muscles in my hand to get used to that, to where I was tapping it less and less, until I was not tapping it at all. I was able to do it all with this hand. But then it started, you know, because as every new song we learn there, it comes in, it gets played a lot for a while, and then it kind of gets played less. And then the next thing I know, it was only showing up maybe once every 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and I was back to, holy cow, I can't do it anymore. So the point being there, that all these muscles in the fingers and the hands and the wrist that involve playing the guitar, unless we keep doing those exact same exercises, they won't even stay there. So even when you get them to that point where you're like, whoa, look how fast I can downpick, you know, whatever that might be, if you don't keep doing that, it won't stay there. But I don't think that's anything to feel bad about. It's just what it is. It'll come back. You can practice it, and it'll come back to where you're playing it at those tempos you were before. And then another thing, downpicking is very similar to that too. If we work on getting a really fast downstroke, it'll eventually get, you know, really solid. But if we're not doing it all the time, that gets hard to keep up doing too. Okay, let's move on here to the next topic. So we've done what I like to call finger gymnastics. We talked about playing 8th notes, quarter notes, 16th notes, 8th note triplets, and we did them at 60. Bop the metronome up to 80, to 100, to 120, right? Move the metronome. And then we're going to talk about playing with jam tracks too here in a minute with some of this other material. Okay, let me just take a second and get to a couple things. People here, what do we got going? Smells Like Teen Spirits. I have no idea how to pronounce your name. I don't even recognize those letters, really. Well, some of them, but there's things there I don't even understand. But thank you for coming in. Smells Like Teen Spirit is a great one. So I'll throw that on my list. I'll try to do a lesson for it. Actually, I'm really glad you mentioned it. I think it used to be on my list and I forgot about it. Paul says, what if we can try to put triplets into 8 and index finger should be 1 on click 1? I think I wait a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not totally sure I exactly know what you mean, but I think I might know what you mean there, Paul. If you wanted to practice 8th note triplets, but always have your finger on 1, or where the first finger always hit with the click, you would want to take, you know how we're playing groups of 4? You would want to play groups of 3. So I'm going to leave out, I'll just leave my pinky out for a minute. I'll just go 1, 2, 3. So now if I put that metronome back on at 60, and I'm going to play my 8th note triplets, triplet, triplet. That would have my first finger always on 1. So that would be a good way if you want to make sure, if you want to practice 8th note triplets, but you're finding that the groups of 4 over the 3 is tough, which makes sense because it is a little bit, then absolutely take a pattern of 3 and work on those as your 8th note triplets. I would maybe do 1, 2, 4. That's a good one. It's very popular in scales. And 1, 3, 4, also a good one. 1, 2, 3 will not have a big a benefit as far as when we relate that to scales and tonal music. When we're playing this finger gymnastics, we would refer to this as atonal. It doesn't have a tonal center. That's where scales come in. So the sounds are kind of all over the place. But again, that's the beauty of practicing that because you're just working on technique. You're just working on strengthening your muscles in your fingers, relaxing your hand. Yeah, you're not worried about, where do I go now? B flat, wait, what key is this? E flat. You're not worried about all those notes and all that and stuff. Okay, moving on. Yeah, I hope that answered your question, Paul. You can let me know if it did, but I kind of think that's what you meant. And that's a very valuable thing anyway, would be to practice the triplets, 3 notes per string. Okay, so now we'll move into patterns. So David just says, I always try to use my pinky in warm-up and technique. Absolutely, absolutely, Dave. Very important to get that pinky involved. That's where these groups of 4 come in very handy, or like Paul just said, groups of 3, but make sure you either go 1, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 4 so that you're working on involving the pinky. So there's just 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. If you don't want to pick them all too, you could also work on your hammers by. So I'm only picking the first note, and then I'm letting this hand do the work to hammer, hammer. That'd be a good exercise too. Very valuable, of course, right? So patterns. So this was my next topic. I might actually save this for another video. However, patterns would be taking like a scale that you already maybe know, like a C major scale, and working on specific patterns. Like some very popular ones are up 3, back 1, up 3, back 1, up 3. Up 4, back 2, up 4, back 2. Skipping from the 1st to the 3rd, 2nd to the 4th. Those are huge. And I'm going to save those, just thinking about it now, because I don't know that they completely apply right here, right now. But they do apply to technique and expanding that knowledge. And again, musiclearning.com on the site, especially if you become a member, that's all arranged in a very building block way. So piece by piece in the order that you really should have it, instead of grabbing exercises that are not good. I've spent a lot of time building that site, and specifically the member section of that site, and making a complete method that makes a lot of sense. Okay, we talked about skipping strings. Arpeggios. Arpeggios are chords being broken. So instead of playing like, so a C chord is made up of a C, an E, and a G, right? A lot of times we play it like that C chord, right? That we know, but I could play it like that. I could play it like that. I could play all these different inversions of a C chord. All over the fretboard, I have these inversions of my C chord. It's all the same 3 notes. It's C, E, and G, because that's the only notes in a C chord. So, but an arpeggio is breaking those notes up. So I can just grab my chord and I can, you know, that's an arpeggio. But what a great way to make it a part of your technique practice is taking different arpeggios that it's still learning the chord, it's breaking it up, and it has us practicing them in these different ways. And again, in the member section of the site, I have all kinds of different ways, from arpeggios that move across the strings to arpeggios that stay in a position. But they'll be very important, because with arpeggios, we typically have 1 note per string. I mean, sometimes you can make it where you would have 2 notes per string, but the nature of an arpeggio, because it's a broken chord, the notes are not side by side, so you have to skip strings. So unlike our scales and our finger gymnastics exercises we earlier in this live stream, the arpeggios have us working on picking 1 note per string, which makes a very different exercise as far as technique is concerned. So another huge thing that should go into that. That's why if you notice, even in the free section of musiclearning.com, you could just go to musiclearning.com, click on lessons. I have 8 boxes there, right? Basics, chords, strumming, technique. So this is all wrapped up in that technique section, working on finger exercises, scales, scale patterns, arpeggios. These are all things that, I mean, they correspond to a few topics, right? They'll correspond to arpeggio is a broken chord, so that also goes with the chords, but it also falls under the technique section. Okay, let's see. Paul said, we are going back to very initial lesson, but thanks for reminding. These lessons are so good. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, and again, that's the thing with this particular stuff is these lessons on technique, they seriously apply to every level. And for somebody who's played a long time and might come in and go, oh, I've played 10 years, I don't need any of this. Well, you do. We all do. I do. I've played for 30 years. I still need this stuff. I need this stuff as much as I need the most complicated stuff I play. It's like we can't spend too much time on the basics. It's not possible to spend too much time working on what we've been talking about. It's again, it's the muscles in the finger. It's training your ear. It's training your fingers to do what you want. It's one thing about these finger gymnastics exercises that we talked about in the beginning, where you make up the pattern. So if you make the pattern up on the fly, your brain is saying, okay, I'm going to go 1, 3, 2, 4, 1, 3. Now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to skip a string. Your brain makes that decision. Then you have to translate that to both hands. The pick hand has to flip to the string you're going to. So if you think about it, that's endless. It's completely endless for that stuff to happen. So this is all levels for sure. Okay, we're actually gonna wrap this up in about another 5 minutes. I'm trying to keep the live stream just a little bit on the shorter side. I don't really know why. This is still all new waters to me. I'm just testing to figure out what exactly is gonna make the most sense for everybody. Anyway, so using jam tracks. So we've been using a metronome. Using jam tracks just is a lot more fun. So if this page stays online on the YouTube channel, which it may. Some of the live streams I leave up, some I take off. There will be a link to the page that goes with this that will have some drum and bass jam tracks to play along with. It's basically like using a metronome. It's just a little more fun, right? It's more musical. Okay, and that brings us to the last topic, and then I'll take some questions, anything you guys want to talk about for a minute, guys and girls. But the last thing I want to talk about is alternate picking versus natural picking or economy picking. So alternate picking makes sense probably to everybody, right? It's alternate picking. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Always. You're just down, up, down, up. Natural picking, also known as an economy picking, is a combination of alternate picking and then sometimes going down, down, or up, up. We'll talk about where. We're going to bring it back to that 3-note exercise that Paul mentioned, which is perfect. I didn't even plan on that, but being that Paul mentioned it, that makes the most sense. We'll come back to those 8th note triplets and talk about picking it both ways. So that picking we're just talking about now, where it's not completely alternate, where it's sometimes alternate, sometimes not, is known as natural picking or economy picking. Some people will call it sweep picking, but it technically really only qualifies as sweep picking if you actually are sweeping the strings down across the, or sorry, sweeping the pick down across the strings. Those that would qualify as sweep picking, where the string is sweeping. So just to put some clarification to that, because I notice a lot of things online and you have people saying that that's not, people have different names for it. So, but sweep picking is, my definition of sweep picking would, the pick would sweep across a few strings one way and then another way, versus economy picking or natural picking. It's not so much. So I'll show you how. Let's apply that to something. So let's come back here. I'm in 5th position now. We're going to do 8th note triplets. I'll put the metronome at 60. Here's our just low E, our quarter note. 8th note I double. 8th note triplet, I'm going to put 3 evenly spaced in this beat. So we're going to go triplet, triplet, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So let's go 1, 3, 4 as our fingering on this low E string. Triplet, 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 triplet. But let's go from the 6th to the 5th string. Let's go triplet, triplet. Okay, and now let's look at those 2 different picking, because this will be very important to a pattern like this. So if I alternate pick it, easy as far as I'm going down, up, down, right? So far so good. But when I move to the 5th string, if I'm truly alternate picking, I'd have to start with an up. Because remember, I went down, up, down. So now I'm going up, down, up. So when I get to that 5th string, that 3-note pattern is picked the opposite way it was on the 6th string. The 6th string was down, up, down. If I stay true to alternate picking, when I get to the 5th string, I'm going up, down, up. So if I move this across all 6 strings, it means my 6th string is starting with a down, 5th is starting with an up, 4th is starting with a down, 3rd is starting with an up. So I would get down, up, down, up, down, up. Now, I was picking every note, but I was only telling you the first note of each beat, right, of each of those triplets. Down, up. So down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Now, if I'm natural picking it or economy picking it, here's the biggest difference. Because I went down, up, down on that 6th string, the last pick stroke I made was down. My pick is already heading down. I can continue to go down. Down, up, down, down, up, down. Now I'm picking it the exact same thing on every string. Down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. Right? Down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. Is one better than the other, or is one more correct than the other? This is the debate that has gone on forever, since I was a kid. And I've studied with a lot of different guitar teachers, and some guitar teachers I had a tremendous amount of respect for, who I thought were amazing players, and players who leaned one way or the other. Some leaned very much to alternate, some leaned very much to not. So I don't think there really is an answer. I think ideally we would be good at both, but that's a lot of time to have to get good at both. You may find yourself gravitating one way or another. You can't go wrong working on alternate picking. That will save ourselves in a lot of places where, you know, we're just alternate picking. We're alternate picking everything, so there's no question. But I mean, there are sometimes there's riffs that we play where you might find it easier to do 2 downs in a row if you're skipping a string. So is it right or wrong? Not really. But yeah, so that's the take on that. I think the biggest thing is that you are aware of it. If you're not aware of it, if you're in and out of down picking, then up picking, and you're not, then that's when you start becoming sloppy because you're not exactly sure what's happening there. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap this up now. I just want to see what let's see. David says, I agree with Paul. I've played for 35 years and learned stuff I missed or relearned stuff I have forgotten, and how to get away from bad habits I've acquired. Yeah, absolutely, David. You're totally right. It doesn't really matter how long we've played. It's easy to pick up bad habits. It's also easy to forget things. But the beauty of that is, it's absolutely never too late to relearn things the proper way, or just learn brand new things. Like, I think that's one of my favorite things about this instrument. Not just I love to play piano too. But we will spend our lives trying to get really good at these, right? Like there's just so much to learn, but that's the beauty of it. I feel like I'm learning as much today as I learned when I was 15 years old. People go, that can't be. It absolutely is. It doesn't only takes me a minute to find something that I cannot play, right? In fact, just before I started doing this live stream, I saw a little thing with Scott Henderson on the side, and I just started to check it out, and he was showing this riff, and oh yeah, it was pretty brutal. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna bookmark that and come back and learn that because it's awesome. I love Scott Henderson's playing. But anyway, that's the beauty of this instrument. It never stops, and we can always keep learning forever. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming in. Musiclearning.com is the site. Check it out. I have a setup lesson times for the week. This is Sunday, so I'm going to set up a new one for this week, but the link is in the description below. And some point today, I will make my schedule for the week. The schedule at this point is still kind of flipping all over because of the different time zones and the different topics. I'm trying to figure out exactly how I'm going to do this. I would love to just say I'm going to do 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time every Wednesday, because for half the week. So I think the times are going to have to constantly change, and I figured the best way to do that was to create a page where I will have each week's lesson times and the topics to be discussed. So you can go there and you can bookmark that page and keep coming back, or join the mailing list so you get notified of the week's lesson streams. And what else? Yeah, Tripfuse is my band. I have a couple new things happening with that is going to be fun that I'm excited to share with everyone. And the site is undergoing some massive changes right now. It's a good time to get over there, get involved with it, become part of it. There's a free member section you can join, which I have some really cool stuff going on in there with this drip content where you get new material each week sent to you over a course of a month. And then, of course, there's the paid section that is the whole online method that I've been started in 1999 and have been working on since, and lately been really working on it. Yeah, that's it. As always, I want to thank everybody for coming in here and watching. So awesome. I love doing them. And does anybody have any questions or anything they want to talk about before we sign off of here? In reference to what we did, I hope I got out to everybody's questions. And again, as long as this page is left online, which I think it probably will be, there'll be a link below that will hook up with all this material we talked about. It will be that technique page on the site, but if you go there right now, you'll notice that it's being worked on. But that's just right today on the live stream, which is April 2nd. If you're rewatching this any day past April 2nd, 2017, it's probably already done. So yeah, so I think I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to go get back working on the site because I have some new ideas just from today. Somebody mentioned Teen Spirit and some other stuff, and Florian, I'm not sure if I said your name right, but he says, thank you so much, also very much for doing the stream. Super helpful. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming in and watching, and thanks for taking the time to comment and make a message. It's very, very nice. I love doing these. I love meeting everybody. I love the live part of it. It is so fun. It is so cool. And David, thank you, David. And David, I'm just curious because I don't think, did you just join the site? I think you might have, right? Because I think a David M joined, and I had to, because I knew you were in the last live stream, so I wondered if that might have been you. If so, thank you so much. And stay tuned because there's so much good stuff coming there. Yeah, okay, well, I'm going to sign off, everybody. I'm going to say thanks again. Musiclearning.com is the site. Subscribe if you haven't. Like, comment. Feel free to leave anything in the comments, like lessons you'd like to see, anything about live stream times, anything really. Yeah, because I'm live streaming so often, maybe whatever topic or whatever you mention will be in the next live stream coming up. So anyway, I'm going to say bye all. Thanks so much for being in here. And hopefully we'll see you very soon. Oh, wait, one last thing. David, not yet. Waiting on. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, well, David, there's oh, so maybe it was not you then, but there is a free member section too that you just join. You just have to pay. You register. It gives you well, you can make your own password, whatever, but it lets you into so a section. So I know it's a little bit complicated, but there's the very free section of the site, which is what you go to when you go to musiclearning.com right now. And then there's a member section, but there's a free members section which you register for. And it lets you have access to a whole bunch more material, and then if you want more, then you have to become paid. But that free member section, you could spend a long time in there before you'd ever really have to become a member, a paid member, if you wanted or didn't want. Anyway, JH, thank you, great lesson. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for watching, and yeah, again, thank you guys. So I'm gonna sign off, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, later.